Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Knee to Knee, where we unravel the science of connections. I'm your host, Mark Merritt. Today I'm sitting down with Jesse Munns, a veteran helicopter pilot who spent nearly 20 years flying high-stakes missions across the United States, from Las Vegas tours to EMS helicopters and offshore oil rig operations. But this isn't a conversation about aviation. It's about what happens when a man spends 17 years running from shame, guilt, and fear, and what it takes to finally stop running. Jesse's journey took him through divorce, financial devastation, excommunication from his church, and battles with pornography addiction and depression. He was grinding, surviving, and putting on a good face while drowning behind the scenes, until one conversation with his wife changed everything. That moment became the catalyst for Jesse to face his darkest fears and build Awakened Iron and Soul, a brotherhood where men drop the mask, forge real connections, and discover healing through brutal honesty and faith. In this episode, you'll hear about the civilian helicopter pilot journey, the hidden cost of compartmentalization, why men bond over scars instead of victories, and the 3 steps that Jesse uses to help men awaken, forge strength, and find peace. And at the end, Jesse gives us a powerful 20-second challenge that could change how you see yourself. So buckle up. This one's raw, real, and exactly the conversation that many men need to hear. Let's dive in and get knee to knee with Jesse Munns. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Knee to Knee. We are excited. Once again, as always, I'm excited to have somebody on with us. He's a veteran helicopter pilot who flew high-stakes missions across the U.S. for nearly 20 years, all while battling shame, guilt, and fear of abandonment that nearly cost him his marriage and identity. And out of that raw darkness, Jesse forged Awakened Iron and Soul, a brotherhood where men drop the mask, forged the iron, and awakened their souls through brutal honesty, faith, and unbreakable connections. Jesse, welcome to the show. This is a conversation that I think I love. We're going to light some fires, man.
And I'm the kind of guy that likes to put some gas on those fires. So,
well, I'm the old wildland guy, so I like to put them out.
We're definitely going to have some fun.
Yeah. So welcome. Very excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So if you can, tell us a little bit, that obviously with the intro, but tell us, I'd love to hear you went through the whole process of doing tours in Vegas, and helicopter tours, and then you got into EMS flying. And so you had a pretty cool career. Yep. as a pilot. And so tell us about that process. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of the story behind how and why that ended. I know that's a little bit of a darker topic, but how and why that ended, and then what you've done from there. So I'd love to be able to hear a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's a very common question I get very often. I went civilian route. So a lot of guys go military. I was at Utah State University. I was studying to be a vet because I grew up on a dairy farm in northern Utah. And my cousin started a flight school. And we were at some family reunion. He had a little video of what he was doing. And he's like, if you ever want to go for a flight in a helicopter, let's go. And I'm like, well, if you're offering a flight in a helicopter, let's go.
Why not?
So, yeah, exactly. So I showed up at the Logan Airport. He pulled it out of the hangar. I mean, it was a little R-22. Have you ever seen one of those?
Yeah, they're small.
They're tiny. Like, you barely fit in this thing. And we took off. And it was the coolest.
It's the MASH helicopter that was in the TV show. That little tiny. They're so small you can get one guy in front. Yeah. Almost,
No. So MASH had the Bell 47. This thing's smaller than the Bell 47.
I'm just thinking the front of the MASH was so small, right? I mean, you're not dealing with a big helicopter.
No. And so we took off. I think we flew for 5-10 minutes, not very long, like a pattern around the airport. And he's like, if you ever want to go again, let's go. And I remember sitting in biology class at USU, way at the top of the amphitheater, 1 out of 300 kids, and the professor's down there talking about meiosis, mitosis, or some cell biology. And all I could think about was that flight. So I call up my cousin. I'm like, let's go for another flight. And this time was a little longer. We took off. And he's like, I can teach you how to do this. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, pay me $100 and I'll let you fly it. No way. So I scrounged up $100 at the age of 21. And we went on an intro flight and I was hooked. That's all it took. And I dropped out of Utah State and went to flight school and never looked back. So
Yeah.
from there, the civilian side's a little more challenging than military. So you go through flight school, you get about 200 flight hours, and then you get all your ratings, your private, commercial, instrument, certified flight instructors, and the instruments. Now you're marketable to other flight schools. Luckily, the school was growing enough. I was hired back after graduation within like 6 months, and I was there for, I think, a year, 2 years. And
That'll
then,
get your hours up.
yeah, it did. I got to about 850 hours. Due to political issues, they fired me. And in aviation, it's not a matter of if you get fired, it's a matter of when.
Oh,
Young kid, Dick, 27. I had a 6-month-old fired, trying to figure out what to do with my career. Feel like I'm stuck. So I went back to the factory work for a little bit and tried going military, and I didn't pass the personality section. And my recruiter's like, "How do you not pass the personality section?" I'm like, "How did you not prep me for the personality section?" So anyway, so the military went out, and then my cousin called me up one day who taught me and got me into flying. He's like, "Hey, there's a guy in Utah that's needing a pilot to fly with his pilot from Tennessee to Utah. Call him and tell him you'll do it." Well, what? So I was like, "I got this job. I got this kid." And he's like, "Just shut up and do it." And so I called him, and he's like, "All right, yeah, I need this guy. I need a pilot to fly with mine. Are you willing to pay for 1 tank of gas?" And I was like, "Sure." "Are you willing to pay for your plane ticket out there?" "Yeah." And he's like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" He's like, "You're the 14th guy that I've talked to, and you're the first one willing to do both." And I said,
Oh,
"Terry,"
wow.
me and Terry are still good friends to this day. And I said, "Terry, for me to go out and get 15, 20 hours in an R-44 is going to cost me about 20 grand. To buy my plane ticket and 1 tank of gas, you're going to pay, I mean, I'm going to be spending less than five." That's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
The reason why I tell that story is that led to a job. And I was flying tours around Lake Powell. And then I ended up doing ag spraying for a summer, working the ground crew. Finally got to my 1,000 hours, and I went to the Gulf of Mexico and flew offshore to the oil rigs for about a year. Then
Oh,
I got the hour requirements to go to Vegas. And when I went to Vegas, I was there 4 years. And then I went to EMS, and I flew EMS for 8.
okay.
Yeah, long story, but that's kind of the process that a lot of the civilian pilots kind of go through. Is it's kind of messy. They jump from niche to niche, just building that next job, building the turbine hours, just trying to
Yeah.
progress. And through that time, it was always something I was working towards. But during that time, I was really developing bad habits and developing not a way of really appreciating myself. I forgot myself. Like I just dove into the helicopter career, and that was my identity. That's what I ate, drink, slept. It was who I was for 17 years. And in 2017, I got divorced, and that was really hard because
Yeah.
now my ex-wife moved back to Utah to be closer to family. I tried to see the kids as often as I could on that 5-and-2 schedule, working tours. Went and did EMS for a week on, week off schedule, and the amount of debt that that divorce put me into was devastating. So trying to work overtime, trying to travel and see the kids, it was very hard. You know, it was very lonely. It was very frustrating. You just cope, you grind. You have no other choice but to just push forward.
Right.
And there's just times you put on a good face. Like when people ask, "Hey, how you doing? You're flying out in Iowa. You're doing great." "Yeah, I'm doing great." But behind the scenes, you're just like, "I'm drowning and I can't tell you about it." And it's
Right.
hard. It's very hard. And so over the year, I came to realize that as I was talking to my buddies and I slowly would open up a little bit, they would open up as well. Because they would finally ask, like, "How you doing?" I'm like, I'm struggling. Dude, so am I.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of realized that men bond more over the scars than they do over victories. Like I look at my
Yeah.
pilot buddies at Maverick, like I haven't seen the majority of them in 8 years. And we talk like we had just flew a tour together yesterday. And
Right.
so over the years, the depression was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was getting into the pornography. I was getting into seeking outside validation from relationships
Hmm.
versus really looking inside and seeing what the issues were. And I met my wife, beautiful, amazing, and she stuck through me through a lot of drama and garbage.
Yeah.
And one thing was It wasn't until she's like, I see the man in you. You're better than this. And you need to start changing things because you say you want your life one way, but your actions are completely different. And from that
That's a hard conversation to be in when you're the receiver.
it's a very hard conversation,
Yeah.
but it was
And
one
kudos to your wife
100%.
for having that courage to say, "Hey, I got to tell you something." Yeah.
Yeah. And it took that moment of clarity of like, if I don't change this pattern that I've unconsciously have created, then I'm going to lose my wife. I'm going to have another son that I'm going to be an abandoned father to, and I'm going to lose everything again.
Yeah.
And it took that moment for me to really dive in and say, okay, yes, I have a pornography problem, but what is the issue behind the pornography? Like, why am I looking at pornography? And through a lot of research, a lot of therapy, I realized I was trying, it's the dopamine hit, basically, is you're chasing dopamine, you're chasing adrenaline. And when I finally started seeing that, there was also a base emotion further than that, and it was fear. And the fear of losing her caused me to hide and not be 100% truthful for her to see who I really was, for her to stay. Like, in a way, I was self-sabotaging my life and I
Right.
didn't even know it. And that's hard to admit.
But and I'm sure that was really difficult, but I think also it had to have been kind of a light bulb moment. It's like, "Oh, wait a second." Once you realize, it's like, "Oh, this okay. I don't like to hear that, but there's some progress there."
There's room for progress. If I wasn't ready to hear it, then I would have
Mhm.
just kept on going.
Right.
Like if you want to say the stars aligned just right for the right moment, the right conversation, that was the aha awakening moment. And so then I
Yeah.
started really diving into all those bad habits. And once I did, that's when I found out fear of losing her and being an abandoned father to another child. That was a big emotion, a big thing that was causing me to go into those coping mechanisms and being distant, like sitting on the couch, scrolling on my phone while she's sitting right there next to me and there's no connection. And so figuring out that of like, why am I scrolling and saying it's because I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. Like there was times like flying, I could compartmentalize when I was dealing with the depression when the tones dropped and being a pilot kicked in and I could go fly that mission and come back safely, but then all those emotions hit. But once I was out
So
of flying, I had no way
yeah.
of hiding any longer.
So how did you make that transition? You're sitting on the couch with your wife and you're scrolling. How did you make that transition over to being more present in that moment with her? What were the steps? What were the things that helped you through that process?
Excellent question. That's a very good question. The steps
Well, thank you.
were, you ask just as hard of questions as I do. It's that process takes a very long deep at yourself of facing that fear because you have to. Like if that fear is if I say what's really going on in my mind and she leaves, you have to be able to own that consequence
Right.
because it's her choice to stay or leave. And then it led to, as me being a father, feeling like I abandoned my kids for 8 years, being on the road traveling as a helicopter pilot. I did everything I could because the child support was so high, the alimony, all the financial obligations from the divorce degree.
Mhm.
I met those needs. You know, the children still were provided for. Was I there
Right.
present? No, but they were provided. I didn't just completely just say, all right, I'm done. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
I did what I could with the tools that I had. And so I had to really swallow that one of swallowing that shame, that guilt. And another big one was being excommunicated from the LDS church. That was a huge identity to me.
Yeah.
And, those are the things that I had to face and say the things that led to the first divorce, that led to me being an abandoned father, the shame of being excommunicated, the things that led to those outcomes were just choices. That's not who I was. And once I finally was able to realize that, the weight came off and I felt like a whole new person. And it was incredible. But it took 17 years of grinding that same pattern of, once a cheater, always a cheater. You're the deadbeat dad. You abandon your
Mhm.
kids. You wrecked a marriage. You got kicked out of your church. Like hearing those thousands of lies and believing them for so long, and then finally realizing what they were and be able to let them go and saying, those were just choices. Those were just situations. That's not who I am at my core. That's liberation. That's release.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's so many times that we get in our head. I mean, we're in our heads, and that's the worst place for us to be, right? And
And a lot
so,
of men don't know how to get out.
right. And so, I mean, you start swimming in that soup of, I hate to say woe is me, but I mean, all the things that you could think wrong about yourself, right? And I don't do this right, and I don't do that right. And before you know it, now you've spun yourself into a situation where you're not even in reality because everything is so bad. I mean, there's nothing in your life that you've done so horribly wrong, but still in your mind, goodness sakes, you're the spawn of Satan,
And that's the fear. Like
right?
if I
Yeah,
tell this person what's really going on, they're going to abandon me like my first wife. They're going to abandon me like the church did. They're going to abandon me, like all these people that have abandoned me. So why try? Well,
right,
the truth is you try. You got to put the faith in yourself and let people make the choice for you. And the people that truly love you will stay. And that was the biggest blessing is when I finally was able to say, hey, I did this wrong. And they're like, so what do you mean? So, like you should like run for the hills. And they're like, no, you're a good person. And, and that's what really drove me to creating Awakened Iron and Soul is men are craving that connection, that I don't want to say validation because that's kind of hindering on the coping mechanisms, but
right.
it's almost that second validation of like, dude, you're fine. Quit sabotaging your life. Start making the better choices. You're not stuck. And so many times have I been on the phone with pilot buddies that have had the similar conversations, and you hear the release afterward. They're just like, really? I'm like, yeah, there's always hope. Always
Right.
hope.
So tell us a little bit about Awakened Iron and Soul.
So, Awaken Iron and Soul is kind of that three-step process. First, you have to really sit with yourself, look at the coping mechanisms, the escapisms, the bad habits that you're doing to hide from the pain that you're running from. And once you identify those pain points, you face it head on. And that's where going through the fire comes from. So, forged in fire is steel only becomes its cleanest in the hottest fire. It's red hot. It gets, kind of
Right.
melts, breaks down a little bit, but then it's able to be molded into something new. All the impurities are brushed away or melted away, and you're left with the true cleanest core. So kind of like me, all those bad choices, all those bad lies and things that I was telling myself for 17 years, once I was able to forgive and forget myself, then I was able to start with a whole new clean slate. It
Yeah.
doesn't erase what happened. That's still my story, but I can move forward and make the rest of my life better than what the first 20 years was.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the last step is finding peace in your soul, being able to look in the mirror longer than 5 seconds and saying, we've been through some hard times, but look where we're at. We're still here and we're still doing good. So that's kind of the basis of Awaken Iron and Soul. And it's being able to be there for another man, kind of like we talked about earlier. How do
Right.
I get this connection? Where do I go? So it's provide that space for someone to reach out.
How does someone get involved with Awakened Iron and Soul?
Well, excellent question.
Yeah. How does
So
someone
yeah,
get a hold of it?
my website's awakenedironandsoul.com. I'm on Facebook, kind of working on TikTok and YouTube channels and things like that. Just expanding, but yeah, the easiest is just Google search Awakened Iron.
Okay. Well, yeah, great. We'll make sure that that's down in the description so everybody can click on and jump over there as well. So first of all, I'm going to tell you, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing at least some of your story. And because we all know that there's a lot more to that. We just kind of went quickly through. I hope that we can have you back again in the future to tell more and dive into a little bit more about that healing part of your journey, which is
Correct.
always fascinating to go through. So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask the one question that we ask everybody. So based off of our conversation today, what is the one thing that someone can do today to build deeper connections with those around them?
Take 20 seconds, look in the mirror, and tell yourself one good thing about yourself. Really soak it in, and then call somebody and tell them what you just did and see how you feel.
Interesting. Okay. So we're going to take 20 seconds and say something good about ourselves.
Or say a truth. I'll
Okay.
repeat that. Say a truth that you've been telling yourself a lie.
Okay.
Sit on that, believe it, and then call someone that you trust and tell them what help.
That I think that could be an amazing experience for someone to go
Yeah.
through. It's a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because if you've been telling yourself a lie and now you're really trying to face that, like you talked about, you're facing it head on. But then to be able to make that call to somebody who can help support you and in that process go through that, that's important.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
And once you feel that validation of, wow, they didn't like shun me, the
right.
rest of the work will follow.
Well, that's awfully good to know, because if we can just keep going that one step at a time, and I hate to say, what about Bob, the baby steps, right? But
We all crawl, at some point.
exactly.
It's just starting the movement in the right
Yep.
direction. It doesn't have to be a leap.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a sprint. It's just that one movement in the right direction that will change the difference.
Absolutely. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for coming on and joining us for another episode of Knee to Knee. We'll make sure that we get everything up so they can get a hold of you and reach
Perfect.
out as well to what you're working on, which I think is an amazing thing. And so thank you, everyone, for taking a few minutes with us today, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks a lot.